Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. I am super excited about our guest today. He's got a background in the go-to-market strategy and production management, bringing tech-driven approach to the cycling industry. His company partners with top brands, giving consumers an alternate to outright bike purchasing. His aim is to make high-quality bikes more accessible for retailers and consumers. Please welcome the CEO of Sweet Spot Bike Leasing, Ryan Fishel. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for the invite. Glad to be here.
Well, as you know, we love talking about endurance. So, Ryan, how has your endurance mindset impacted your life unexpectedly?
I think it goes hand in hand with the amount of suffering I'm willing to incur. I think there's a lot of yeah, a lot of that when you have your own, your own company, and not realizing that until after you started it. I think is the most surprising thing. But yeah, I think the ability to endure definitely comes from my history in endurance sports. So yeah, I used to race gravel. I rode a lot of road, and then I originally started mountain bike, so you're kind of familiar with all the the different types of suffering in cycling.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about that a little bit deeper. I mean,
Yeah.
the suffering that you've had in your cycling, your racing days, and now to your point of starting and building a business. And give us a time that, like, in that entrepreneurial journey so far, where you've sort of reached back to your suffering days, your training days, and say, you know what, today's not as bad as I thought it was going to be because X years
Yeah.
ago I was, picking gravel out of my shoulder after. Give us some sort of flavor
Yep.
there.
So it's more the training side. So one of the things that I always think about is, I mean, I'm not a climber, right? But I used to climb a lot because it was terrible and made me better. But the mantra I always carry around with me, or I always think about, is that the mountain or the hill always ends, right? So you're always gonna eventually get to the top. And this is one of those things that you apply, or I apply to things outside of the sport as well. And then no matter what, whatever I'm going through, it's going to end at some point. And then on the other side, the next challenge arises, or, whatever that looks like. So it always gives me a little bit of hope. So, yeah. So specifically, it happens, I say, a lot, but, at one point we did pivot from, and I guess a little background for your listeners. We are a leasing company. And so we have a tech platform, that effectively allows you to lease bikes through your favorite retailer, or your favorite, your favorite brand, in less than 3 minutes. So you pick out the bike you want, you go through our platform, and then you can either walk out with a bike from the shop, or it gets delivered to you, or however the manufacturers do it, right? And so we prior to that model, we we're a subscription service. So we built the bikes, did all the things, right? And then you just paid us for its use. And so we've kind of expanded that. So I think that as it applies to the suffering part, there was just a lot of things that got us from when we started the company, so the fully encompassing, white glove service, to ultimately the finance company, was just a lot of challenges through the process, right? So how do you go from a a very logistics heavy company to a finance company? And I don't have a finance background. It's one of those things where it's trial by fire, but the fire at some point is going to subside.
Yeah, yeah. Well, take us back to that time when you came up with the idea of some pivoting the business and from that subscription model to a leasing business. Like, do you vividly remember sort of waking up one day and saying, you know what, I'm going to go in this direction? Or was it sort of this slow, painful pivot?
Yeah, so it was a couple of things. 2022, we launched the original product. It did really well. We started in Boulder, Denver, with the Golden area, right? So local to us. And so we ended up, um, yeah, starting that, and it got popular elsewhere. So we some people heard about it from their friends in the Colorado area. Um, and our second biggest market ended up being San Francisco. So we ended up shipping bikes to people, and then we had bikes kind of everywhere from that first go. And then fast forward 2023, we're raising money to scale the business, and the CEO at the time at the Pros Closet reached out and wanted to have a conversation to see if we could help lease their bikes. And that ultimately didn't end up going anywhere. But about the same time, other brands started reaching out as well. So Moots Bikes was one of the first, and then one of our partners at the beginning of the entire, I guess our launch partner was Ventum, and so they've been very supportive about that shift as well. And then from that point, we had retailer after retailer reaching out. Um, the other thing too was in 2022 we went to a lot of events, so physical events, and we talked to like 250, 300 people to see what they really wanted, right? And so our original offering was like high-end e-bike or high-end gravel bikes and high-end road bikes, and people wanted mountain bikes. And because we built everything in-house, we tried to keep it as simple as possible. And so we're really trying to find out what the next thing we should launch would be. And it turns out people were most concerned or most interested in how to get an e-bike, which was number one.
Mm.
Um, and they would talk a lot about, oh, I want to take my kids to school in it, but like I don't want to buy one, and then I don't know how to get rid of it at the end. And the other was price, right? And so how do I get into an e-bike for cheaper than $2,500 or whatever it is, right? And again, it's the I don't want to hold on to it after I'm done with it, or I want to upgrade to the next best thing, because e-bikes are getting cooler every year, right? So I don't want to buy the thing today and then tomorrow a new one comes out and I'm stuck with it. And so that was another what do you call it? Another question. And then the other was, just how do we get more types, and specifically e-bikes. And the question that we get a lot is again the cargo style, um but then also the commuter style, which was surprising, since I like e-bikes, but I like the ones that don't look like e-bikes. Like a road bike e-bike, right? Or the gravel e-bike that doesn't look like one. And that's not the sentiment that customers, brought. They didn't share that. They actually wanted the opposite. They just wanted something that was comfortable. Even our enthusiast friends that were like, they already had their high-end bikes, or were looking for an e-bike for how to just go to the grocery store real quick, right? If they needed to, or meet friends downtown. Um, so that was interesting. Our original thought was that enthusiasts would be into this more than non-enthusiasts, and 80% of our business is non, which is great, right? It's a much larger market. Um, so I think back to the original question, I think the mindset was, I mean, there's just a lot of breadcrumbs that led us here. I think personally, I would like to have stayed in the enthusiast side. Um, but the market, the larger market, is getting more people on bikes, which is really what's the mission has kind of always been underneath everything. And so if the product to do that is e-bikes, then well, we're all in on that. And then interestingly enough, the second most popular bike is e-mountain bikes. So you're kind of like in that space
Mm.
of both, right? You have enthusiasts of people that want a mountain bike, but they also want the e-bike part of it. So we're kind of seeing, as you go down the line, it kind of melds more into that side too. So you have people that start on the enthusiast bikes, and then they go into like the enthusiast, or not enthusiast, the non-enthusiast bikes, and they go into enthusiast e-bikes, and then eventually some of them end up in, regular enthusiast bikes.
That's really insightful. So if I heard you correctly, back in 2022 when you launched the original
Mhm.
product, were you the owners of the bike and you were leasing them out or
Mhm.
renting them out as a subscription-based model, and then the hardware would return back to you or get
Mhm.
transferred to somebody else?
Yeah. So we built them on order. So if somebody wanted one, we actually fit them. We fit them to it. And then we built it to our spec and then delivered it. So it usually took about maybe a week and a half from the time you ordered it to the time you got the bike. But it's your bike, right? And then at the end of it, we would sell it. Um, Either to the consumer. So we do that now. The consumer can buy it. So just like a car lease, you can buy it for the residual, or it goes to a wholesaler. And so we still we still have that function now.
Interesting. So prior to 2022, what were you up to?
So I was working at Splunk, working in tech. Yeah, so product management there, specifically go to market for new and emerging products. So when I left, I was, for any of you, your more nerdy listeners, I was working on observability, and then before that even was security, more on the cloud side. So yeah, there's a lot of enterprise work, getting some big software projects off the ground and into the market.
And now what was the inspiration to jump off on your own and start this business?
I always felt like it was going to happen at some point. I think I was always kind of looking for a new job every 4 years. There was I think kind of a plateau that I would hit around that point. Pretty much every company I was at, and so I'd say I worked for some really great companies, and it wasn't to the fault of the company usually, but I think there was just always this drive to want to do something on my own, and my background in software, especially in like the subscription and recurring revenue space, and then my personal family background in the carp business, this kind of made a lot of sense. And I worked at bike shops as well, so it was just this melding of all these different experiences that kind of led to the creation of this company.
And I'd love to talk to you about your gravel racing.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that? How far did you go? Give us the story of
Yeah.
where that, because I've got, my passion for cycling, and I don't race. I mean, I race triathlon, but I don't race road race. But it goes back to my childhood. It goes back to that first set of wheels when the training wheels came off and the freedom it gave me. I'd love to hear your journey of sort of how you got introduced to your bike and then ultimately where you ended up.
So I've been riding my bike for ever. I think I got my first bike when I was like 5. So long, like lifelong cyclist, right? And then I was in Florida. So I grew up in Florida, used to ride there a lot. I wasn't any good, but I still rode a ton. And then moved to Washington, D.C. and I think it was like a 6-year break. So I didn't ride for a long time. And largely because it's hard to get to trails. I only had mountain bikes at the time. I only ever rode mountain. And then at some point I ended up working with somebody that was getting into road cycling. And so I was like, all right, he was my boss. I was like, we'll do, road cycling, like road meetings, right? We'll just do ride meetings. And so I ended up getting into road that way. And then it just took off from there. So especially in the DC area, road's easy to get to. And so just spent a lot of time in doing that in and around, the DC area. But always missed mountain biking. And again, I still had one, but it was just hard to do all the things. And then gravel started getting popular, and I rode a gravel ride with a friend of mine. And it felt like kind of a mix between road and mountain. So you get the little technical, little interesting technical things here and there, but then you still have like the fitness of road. And so it fit this, I guess, this gap in between mountain and road that I could, easily or more easily get to. And so kind of focused on that, right? Went from there. So even the DC area, there's some gravel, right? You go between the trails and gravel, but Leesburg is wonderful, right? Loudoun County is amazing. And so it wasn't that far to be able to have like a nice big day. And so spent a lot of time doing that, and eventually ended up doing a lot of races. And then ended up here in Colorado and COVID hit. So I did a few races. But I say they didn't have categories at the time, but it was whatever Cat 2 is. And road is kind of the equivalent of what I ended up ending my racing career at.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. So I'm just outside of Leesburg, and Loudoun County is where I cycle. It's my weekends.
Yeah,
but it's also interesting. Like, I've contemplated trying a gravel bike and getting off my road bike, but it's similar to skiing and snowboarding for me, where I've skied all my life, and it's like, why waste all this energy that I'm held up skiing and then go have something new experience on a snowboard?
Yeah, I mean it's funny because it's like gravel used to just be road riding, right? Like before there were a lot of paved roads, you had little skinnies on gravel roads.
Good point.
But I found the newer geometries are really really good. I'll say one of my personal favorites is the Cervelo Aspero, which feels more like a road bike than a gravel bike.
And
And I felt that. I mean, I still love that bike. I don't have one anymore, but the geometry was really really fun. Just coming from the roadside, to kind of transition into something that has more, what do you call it? Tire clearance and just a little bit more relaxed. I think in a little more slack geometry. But you don't miss the things that you get in a road bike. Because I used to have a S-Works Tarmac when I got that bike, and it was just I just rather ride the Sparrow, right? And so, like I say, if you want to dip your toes into it, check out that bike for sure.
awesome. I will.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'd love to get a little bit deeper into educating the audience on
Yeah.
your business, leasing bikes. For me, until we met, it was a foreign idea. And I was like, what? You
Yeah.
can actually lease a bike? Can you give us a little bit of background of the history of leasing bikes, some of the benefits?
Yeah.
Like, let's educate our listeners.
Sure. So we lease bikes the way that you lease a car. We lease bikes. Again, it's not lease to own. It's not buy now, pay later. You pay for the time that you have the bike. So just the depreciation. For most bikes, it's about 60% of MSRP over a 2-year period. And we do 12, 18, and 24 months periods. So we try and keep it. I mean, we want to make sure that people have the ability to actually save money while still getting the thing that they want. And one of the things that we saw again during the process of putting the company together is that there is a huge desire, especially for the e-bike side, but the ability to purchase is just not. It's just not there, right? It doesn't. That ability does not meet the desire, and so there's this gap where the people again still want the things that they want, and if they could get it for cheaper, they would, and that's where leasing comes in. So again, you can find something. Like you and I could probably find something that we want for a deal, right? Like you can find a discount somewhere or whatever the case may be. But for most folks, they just want the thing for a certain amount of money a month, and that they can again, like just like with the car payment, they want to be able to forecast what that's going to cost them, and so the monthlies are more important. And so the leasing really, I think, resonates with the people that already lease their car. So you see a lot of EV owners doing that, right? People that already pay monthly for their cell phone. I mean, we pay for subscriptions, so we kind of know, what we're willing to pay monthly, and that fits that gap. And then it also allows people to upgrade or walk away if they want to, which is something that normal retail models don't allow. Right. So you buy a thing and you're stuck with it versus I want to buy this thing, try it for 2 years. If I love it, I will buy it outright or upgrade to the next thing. Or if I hate it, I'll just walk away and not have to worry about I'm going to get rid of it. Right. It doesn't sit in my garage. So the consumer that tends to lease is very different than the one that would be kind of like the enthusiast or the more price conscious. I guess, yeah, more retail price conscious folks versus the people that are price conscious from a monthly perspective. And so we're seeing this a lot in Germany and in just Europe in general. So if we look at just the German market, 70% of their e-bikes are leased. The number of bikes that they have, I think they sell per year right now is about 2.2 million. We're a little over half of that. So I think 1.5 this year. Looking to be about 3.6 million by the end of the decade. So we're quickly catching up to the European market. And it's just one of those things where I think, especially in the US, right, with like 80% of us living in either suburban or urban areas, like it's a viable form of transportation. And if you look at the generational differences, I mean, the Gen Z is going to be one of the first generations, or is one of the first generations that are not going to be as wealthy as their parents, right?
Right.
And because of that, you already see buying patterns that are significantly different than like ours, right? Like I never lease a car; we've always purchased one. But that generation doesn't see the value in owning a car. Like only 60% of 18-year-olds right now have licenses versus 80% like when we were growing up. And a lot of that has to do with they don't go that far, right? And they can take an e-bike or an e-scooter, something between their home and school or shopping. And if they really need a car, you have Uber and Lyft.
Mhm.
So you don't need to purchase one. You don't have to pay for gas. You don't have to pay for insurance and maintenance, all the things that come with a car. And so a lot of them are kind of moving towards the micro mobility, e-moto, e-bike model. And so it makes a lot of sense right now to give this offering, because again, it's like, especially those guys, right? Those not guys, but those that demographic. I mean, they'll upgrade every few years when the next cool thing comes out, because there's no incentive for them to keep it. And if they decide that it doesn't work out anymore, well, they just stop paying. Or they're not stop paying, but they, at the end of the lease, they give the bike back and don't renew. And we really, I think there's a real need for that here in the States, and we see it in Europe. So, it's just it's a good proxy for that. Additionally, if you look at the way I would say like the economy is right now, with the fluctuations that's happening, and the tariffs and all of that, like products aren't getting any cheaper; they're only going to get more expensive. And leasing actually makes things cheaper, right? Like you can get the bike for a lot less than MSRP, and you can get the thing that you want for less than MSRP today, which is a huge advantage for most people looking to get into this type of transportation.
That's fantastic. So consumer wants to lease a bike. Do they walk into their favorite bike shop and talk about leasing setup and connect with your company? Like, how does that, if I wanted to jump into a lease tomorrow, what technically do I need to do?
So we are partnering with retail stores and then also brands. So we'll be launching right now. It's we don't have any offerings out publicly. We'll be launching, I think, 8 brands between Q1 or Q2 and Q3. So we have 4 that are ready to go. In the next couple months. So you'll be able to find them either on their website. So 2 of them are direct to consumer, so you'll be able to do that. We're also working with brands and their dealers. And so as we start rolling out brands with dealer networks, you'll be able to find the offering at their actual the dealer retail stores. So you'd be able to walk in, order the bike, walk out with it. But yeah, our initial launch will be direct to consumer. So you'll be able to go on their website and then pick out the bike you want and then have it shipped to your house.
How receptive have brands been in this conversation and with this idea?
Yeah, it's been pretty receptive. We don't do outreach anymore. Most of the brands come to us, so it's been nice. It's been we're bringing in a new idea into a very legacy industry, and so a lot of the concerns from the brands are mostly around the dealer relationships. And so that's something that we're working hard to try and find kind of a middle ground where everybody feels like they're winning. And so that's been, I guess, the largest challenge. So the brands themselves are super interested because it offers them a couple things, right? One, it offers them the ability not to have to discount. And for brands like, I don't know what's running, but for brands that are high-end brands that have to discount, it tends to take a hit on their brand, the brand value a bit, right? Or at least the perception of that brand. And so by having a lease option, you don't have to do that. And that's super attractive, especially in the high-end stuff, where, now they're competing against, I guess, the mid-range priced brands or mid-range products, when normally they've never had a discount ever, right? And a lot of times people would actually in the regular times, they'd add a premium to those products. Excuse me. The best analogy is like the Porsche. Like Porsche doesn't discount. If anything, you pay more for the retail. But if you're looking at like a Porsche, you're probably looking at a BMW Z3 or Z4, M4, excuse me, M4. And that's what, maybe $15,000-$20,000 cheaper. And most people will tend to go with the Porsche because for $20,000, they get the thing they want, right? But when BMW drops their prices by 50%, that gap becomes bigger. And so now between a Porsche and a BMW, the BMW is actually a much more attractive option because that gap is larger. So what we're offering is the ability to get the Porsche down to the price of the discounted BMW without sacrificing the brand recognition, the brand value. And that's been a really good what do you call it, value add for the brands. The other is that, I mean, this is cycling in general, right? There is no recurring model in cycling at all. most people will go in and buy a bike and they may never come back again, right? Like unless the shop does outreach and does a really good job at outreach, the customer never thinks about that again unless something breaks or they need something, right? Our consumers, because we charge them monthly, are constantly in contact with us, right? So every single month we send them emails saying, hey, thank you for your payment for your, let's call it the Ventum GS1, right? And every month they see that. So it's top of mind more regularly than if a brand decide to send out emails to somebody that registered their bikes, which gives the other opportunity that at the end of the lease, so let's say 90 days out, we start talking to our customers and say, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to upgrade? Do you want to buy the bike? Do you want to, you want to just walk away? What do you want to do? And they have to answer it, right? It's not that they can't ignore it because there's money involved, right? And that ultimately they have to make a decision. And at that decision point, we can help push them onto another bike with the same brand, right? So again, Ventum comes out with a new bike in 2 years. Our customer has to make a decision. Let's get you on another Ventum. And that's not an opportunity that most bike brands have, right? They're only there when you want to buy something. And hopefully you come back to them. Hopefully they've been able to get a good enough experience on their own to want to go and buy that bike again.
Ryan, that's really interesting. Because to your point, I don't have a relationship with the bike manufacturer that I ride, and I've ridden now several felts and love it. But I'm just some average, because actually I don't even know I'm a consumer, right? Because I went through a bike store, and that bike store I do see, and I have a relationship with them, partly because I'm passionate about what I'm doing. But but your point about having that touch point and kind of being in front of their next decision is a really wonderful place to be. I'm curious, are there any other requirements around from the consumer side? Do they need to have an insurance similar to your car? Do you need like an insurance? Do you need to do X? Do you need to do Y? Any other requirements?
No. So the consumer comes in and we provide all that coverage. We do not. So our bikes come with insurance. It's crash and theft. We don't provide medical. So just FYI, anybody interested, we'll cover the bike. We can't cover you, but it does include crash and theft insurance. And so basically your investment is covered, right? You just come in and you get the bike. For retailers, part of the value add to them is that we don't include any of the other things. So you go into a bike shop to pick up your bike, let's say with let's say Trek, right? You go to a Trek store, you lease a Trek bike. You then have the ability as a bike shop to sell them the helmet, shoes, everything that doesn't come with that bike, to be able to have a good experience. And so we want to make sure that touch point with the brand or with the dealer, excuse me, is there. So basically we're trying to tee that up. So we cover the bike, we cover all the other things, or we cover the bike and the insurance. We go to the bike shops, take care of the rest. And on the other side too, again, we want the customers to keep coming back, and we have that touch point. We also will start offering maintenance plans. So the consumers can pay us monthly as an upsell or an add-on rather to their existing lease. And then when it's time for them to do the work, they go to the shop that hopefully the shop that they got the bike from, and I continue that relationship. And that's the thing, we own the bike so we can track usage, and not like track where they go, but like track just general mileage and things like that, especially on the e-bike side. And so we can send out reminders on predictive analytics, or like if we see that they're running up in their 1 year tune-up time frame, and really get them back to the shops, which is another revenue opportunity for the local bike shops to be able to kind of take advantage of. So either sell more accessories, and then they're going to get the service revenue on that too. But it's really getting people back through that door on times where either the bike isn't broken, right, or they don't need some random thing. So it's really adding more opportunities for them to create that relationship.
That's awesome. I mean, that's such a win-win. You're really right in the crosshairs. Ryan, I'd love to know, what's the next 12 months look like for you for the business? What are the big milestones?
So we're launching. We have 8 brands that have committed. We won't share them here, but we'll be sharing that in the next few months. So we'll be launching them. the first 4 will be direct to consumer. And the next 4 will be kind of a hybrid. So you might be able to order online and get it shipped to the store, or you can go to the store and get the bike that you want. And then we have another 8 that we're hoping to close before the end of the year that we'll be able to launch. So yeah, looking to get a good expansion on those brands. But I mean, our pipeline, our brand pipeline is like 42 brands deep. So we just need to start chiseling that away. Yeah.
So how can an audience member track you, follow you, look for that announcement? What's the best way to kind of get locked into the Sweet Spot Leasing?
Sure. So I say add me on LinkedIn. I don't know if we'll add my link to your notes at the end, but add me on LinkedIn, Ryan Fishel. And then if you want to go to our website, thesweetspot.com, we'll have a join the waitlist button there. So you can join that waitlist and we'll let you know as brands start launching. And then if one resonates, you can sign up from that brand site.
Fantastic. And absolutely, we'll include those in the show notes.
Yeah.
So you got your magic wand out. What's the one thing that you want to wish for from our audience that is going to be delivered to you by next Monday? If you had one thing in your business you needed help with.
Oh man. I'll say part of the challenge is not the challenge. Part of this job that I didn't expect is that it'd be fundraising all the time. And so we're currently in the middle of a fundraising round. And so for anybody that's interested in getting in early in this company, we're going to raise this round and then I think one more, and we'll be cash flow positive by that time. So right now is, if you see a huge if you see the same vision I do and what cycling looks like in the States and the way that people get it, let me know. Just reach out directly. Be happy to talk to you about it.
That's awesome. Well, Ryan, it's been great having you on the show. I love what you're doing with this leasing. I'm a finance guy, and so I totally get it. And it's an impactful tool that hasn't been in our space yet. I can't wait to see the success story unfold. Audience members, if you got some enjoyment, some value out of today's show, please subscribe to us. Let's track Ryan and his success journey and wish him well as an entrepreneur. Ryan, it's been great having you on the show today. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. This is fun.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefenduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits.